The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. Yet. Today's world teems with innovation. The nexus of hardware, software, and human ingenuity promises a revolution in possibilities. What does tomorrow look like? Witness future proof.
Yours truly, Eric Cavanaugh, here today. We're going to be talking to a couple of experts in our field, Scott Masson of a company called Digital Hive, and my good buddy, Yves Mulkers. He was calling in from Belgium, as a matter of fact, of 7W Data. And we're actually just trying out our new technology, our new approach for shows, where we've got the studio, WCGO in-house here. They always capture our audio, but they're also working on the video these days. So those of you in the studio audience, you get a special take. This is a sneak peek at what the future is probably going to look like. So let's dive right in here. I just want to give some context for our topic today. The company you keep, data engineering for consumption. What does that mean? So in the business intelligence industry for years now, we've been gathering data, pulling data from source systems to be able to analyze it and understand what's really happening out there in the real world. The whole point is to get some idea for how you can make decisions that are informed, that are intelligent, that are going to help your business. So there are all sorts of technologies to do that. You have data warehouses like Teradata and Vertica and Snowflake and Redshift, all these different options. You've got lots of BI tools you can use like Alteryx and Click and Tableau. I actually saw the first ever public demo of Tableau at a conference, and I think it was 2005 in San Diego. I was working for the Data Warehousing Institute way back then, and I walked into one of the party rooms for the night where there was an event scheduled, and there was a table with a guy showing a demo of this brand new software that was being shown for the first time. It was called Tableau, and you could quickly create these visualizations, and I was like, wow, that's going to be big. Too bad I didn't invest in them. I would have made a lot of money on that. But that's just one facet, right? So you have all these other facets, and the bottom line in large organizations is that you'll have lots of different technologies. So you may have a couple different data warehouses, for example, even different technologies for the warehouse. You'll have lots of data marts, and you'll have lots of different tools. A lot of times big companies will have 3, 4, even 5 different BI tools. And then of course, they'll also have multiple integration tools and point-to-point solutions, custom code they've written over the years, et cetera. Very, very complicated environment for most situations. But what we're going to talk about today is how you can kind of bring that all together. So there's this concept of an analytics hub. It's becoming much more popular. And it's kind of interesting because what's old is new again in a certain sense. And I say that because I'm old enough to remember in the 1990s, we talked about portals and intranets and all these interesting things that companies would have. And they're still everywhere. There are portals and intranets all over creation, lots of different technologies used to create them. But today, what we're really seeing is the confluence of lots of different technologies and methodologies which have really matured. And the technology today we'll discuss with Digital Hive, I think, is absolutely fascinating. So with that, let's bring in Scott Masson from Digital Hive. Scott, tell us a bit about yourself and where the idea came from for this technology for what you guys have built.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Eric. Unfortunately, I'm as old as you are almost, so I can probably a little older maybe. So I definitely remember the days of the nasty P word, the portal. And today we've masked it by calling them hubs or apps, but they're still around. Different, rebranded and different, repurposed, but they're still there. A bit of myself, yeah. I mean, I'm like you said, the CTO Digital Hive. So I've been with Digital Hive now for 4+ years. With that, I've spent the last 20+ years in the analytics space, doing things from everywhere from customer support in my early days right through to managing the analytics portfolio at IBM through the acquisition of Cognos. So I've been around for a bit. And Digital Hive, as you said, I mean, it's an interesting technology, and really the genesis of the idea was around a meeting one of our founders had with an executive at a large bank in the US. Was sitting in his office, totally unrelated topic, but he sat down. He's like, "Oh my God, I've got 6 different BI tools I need to log in to find the vision of my business." And kind of off the cuff remark, he said, "Oh, if you can invent something, you can solve that problem. That's it. You have a gold mine." So that was the aha moment for one of our founders. And 5 or 6 years later, we actually have the product in market and are selling it that way now. But that's really kind of was the catalyst for it, was the frustration that end users have because they have so many different applications now they need to go to. And you mentioned all the different data technologies. Rationalizing data has been around for a long time, and the offshoot of that is we've seen, Gartner's tracking like 250 something plus, BI tools and analytics solutions right now, and they all have the distinct advantages and weaknesses. But organizations end up buying multiple tools because there's not one tool that fits all sizes. So that's why you end up with that proliferation of all these different BI tools, and the end users pay the price of having their information now stored in all these different silos that they need to remember where their information is first and foremost, but they need to log in and access all these different contents from disparate systems.
Yeah, and this is a really good point to make. It's like a point about practicality, right? And one of the things that I've learned in this industry, and I've been in it 20 years now, is that when users really like a tool, like let's say it's Tableau or Click or Alteryx or whatever it is, that's the tool they like. They're accustomed to using that tool. Taking that away from them is going to make them pretty unhappy. But by the same token, then you come to meetings and 5 different people have 5 different numbers for something as important as sales, for example. And then you wind up spending the meeting arguing about who has the right number and why. And that's just a big old waste of time. But if you could see into multiple worlds through the same dashboard, through the same portal, if you will, that's when you can start understanding what is the big picture really. And you'll also try to be able to figure out the pipeline and where something is wrong. Like maybe this one solution is not connected to that other data source or new finance source or something. So the point is, if you get that strategic view, now you have a much better understanding for what's happening across the organization, and you haven't taken the favorite tool away from any of your users, right?
Exactly right. And the data, the numbers being different, we see quite often. Usually it's not the data that's wrong. And I'm sure Eve will jump in with that. The data is the data. What ends up happening is because you're using these different tools, sometimes there's different filters that get applied, and you can't see that in the underlying BI tool. So yes, it isn't until you put your Tableau visualization beside your Power BI visualization do you actually recognize the numbers are off. And again, that's the conversation starter right there, is why is it different in Tableau? And it usually turns out that there's some filter model applied or some different slice of the data that's available. But the problem underneath that is that incorrect decisions are being made on different results, right? So that's essentially what Digital Hive allows you to do now, is bring all those different views into a single pane of glass, for the complete story, but also to weed out some of those inconsistencies now that users have.
Yeah, and there's an automation part of this storyline too that I think maybe we'll dive into in the second segment. But before I bring Eve in, that was a good segue. I wanted to throw this other concept at you that we're hearing now. Some really interesting companies, Monte Carlo is one of them, but there are just a whole host of companies doing what they're calling observability. And they'll refer to dark data, for example, or data downtime, terms like this. And what that's referring to is when there's a feed that's not working, like there's some view that's not functioning right now, or there's some data set that you can't see. And so there are really interesting technologies that you can kind of plug into your environment, and they will scan and look for a baseline of information flow. Like every Monday, this comes in from source A, every Tuesday, this comes in from source B, that kind of thing. And when you get to these complex environments, you have hundreds, even thousands of sources. So trying to manually read a report to see, okay, is this one working? Is that one working? It's not really viable. It's not practical. So there are technologies that are elucidating that. And what I see that's interesting is you guys are kind of in that space. You're at least tangential, because you're giving this observability to not just dashboards, but to the disparities among them. And that gives you hints as to why something is missing. And to your point, a lot of times it's filters, right?
Well, exactly. And the example you cite is actually, kind of at the, if you imagine a stack from the data right to the consumable analytics, those tools are really at the bottom of the stack, whereas we kind of fit at the top of the stack, and we monitor, we monitor for those inconsistencies across the visualization aspects, not at the data feeds themselves. So we do it at the analytics, right? Yeah. Which is typically where your end users spend most of their time anyways.
Yeah, right. So you're sort of feeding this end-to-end continuum. You guys are at the top, these other guys are at the bottom. You connect them together, and now you can kind of see what's happening. And Eve, maybe I'll bring you in to comment on that, because you've worked with lots of companies as a consultant. So you've built out these environments, and I'm sure had some happy clients, but a lot of times things don't add up. And that's when you have to start digging in to understand why. And I think the real key there is to have that be a fairly swift and effective process, as opposed to a long, painstaking wild goose chase, which makes everyone unhappy, right, Eve?
Yeah, exactly. I think Scott points out a very important part of it. That's the accessibility, and not only the observability of the data. It's getting an easy access to that data and being able to, in an easy way, compare the two outputs what you have. What I see in the most of the portals as well is they support the workflow of the knowledge workers, the people using the reports. Maybe they have to launch a report in Cognos, and then they have to do some financial treatment, and then based upon that they need to jump to another system to validate that data, and having that facilitated through a portal, that's of major importance as well to these people. But like you say, if you can compare that not only by diving again into the data in itself, but already in how the data is being served, like you said, Scott, and then being able to compare the outputs, that's already a big jump forward, where you can compare them both and see where is it going wrong, and trying to understand which ones of the reports are incorrect. So I think, yeah, that's a major step forward. I've been thinking it through. What is it? We have the portals already for more than 20 years, where they were facilitating the workflow of the business users. But now what I see it is mostly because we have artificial intelligence, which is driving that observability of the data, where it highlights some errors or outliners which are in there, and help you in fact understanding what all your reports are about. And on top of that, really giving insights of which of the reports are really heavily used and which ones are not. Eric mentioned the part of dark data. We see that I think 70 to 80% of the reports ever been built in an organization are never being used anymore, or they have been used once or twice, and then they're never being used again. So having that insight, that helps as well in rationalizing your information management as well. So I think, I don't know if you can bring something into that, Eric, on how you see that is going.
Yeah, I'll throw it over to Scott to comment on that, because usability is a big deal, right? There are some other tools in this space that are focused more on just showing, let's say, the BI project manager who's using which reports when, how often, et cetera, and being able to tie those to some business value. I mean, it sounds fairly simplistic, but that's, it's not the easiest thing to do. And that's something that you folks are able to help out with as well. Is that right, Scott? Yeah,
I mean, through our experience, as well as, through input and statements from analysts, that you're exactly right. There's, less than 40% of actually BI content that is created ever gets consumed more than once, right? It's a lot of the reports are created one-off. And what happens is that, you keep all this legacy information around that's underutilized or not utilized at all. And organizations are stuck paying a cost for that. There's a cost to test it, upgrade it, maintain it for every release. And if you don't have that overarching visibility into what's being consumed and what's not, you're wasting your money just kind of bringing along legacy content when it can be deleted. If it hasn't been used in X amount of time, chances are it's no longer needed, and get rid of it. And that's exactly what the Analytics Hub gives you, is that universal insight into what content is being utilized from which systems.
Yeah, that's really important too. And also, to I think the point you were sort of alluding to there, if some report is old, maybe it's not up to date. Maybe it hasn't received the recent feeds that are more up to date information, et cetera. I mean, I think just to always come up with these examples of consumer life, think about when you're trying to figure out how to use a tool, like some generic tool, like a browser or a MacBook or something, and you do a search online. A lot of times you will get old instructions for previous versions. It'll say, go to this menu, then go to that sub menu, and you go there and like, there's nothing there. Like, what are you talking about? It's because it's hard to stay on top of that stuff. It's hard to track where you've published information about what to do. And then some of these algorithms just go and dynamically grab stuff. So it's not always even correct, right? So there's a real importance to stay on top of the latest versions of things and to make sure that what you're looking at is accurate, right, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that. It's also, you couple it with, if I do a search and it brings back one of these old reports, and a user launches it. And as they're viewing it, it's like, oh my God, this isn't relevant, it's old, it's whatever. And they close it. If I'm on the kind of governance side of things, it's, oh, this report's been used, so it must be good. What's missing is the feedback mechanism or feedback loop that an end user can actually put a comment on the report, rated as low or high. So you really need that kind of ability to not only weed out old content, but also the ability to rate content, put commentary on it to let proactive administrators know that, okay, this is old, maybe it can do a, use a refresh, maybe it just needs to be deleted because it's not relevant whatsoever anymore. So that feedback loop is essential in that whole kind of dynamic where you're trying to, rationalize your portfolio so you're not dragging along 60% of useless content, and you're trying to improve your content and get to the point where, as close to 100% of your content as possible is actually providing value to your users.
The future is heavily automated. The present is heavily automated. And it's usually the critical business processes that involve some human intervention. And that these are the friction points, let's call them, where if it's some tedious task, then you really don't want the human doing that stuff. There are lots of things that humans can do very well. There are lots and lots of things that machines can do very well. And I think the general rule of thumb in business is if a machine can do something faster than a person, let the machine do the job. So we're talking about that today, and really about analytics portals or analytics hubs. I thought that was kind of funny that Scott Masson made that comment. Scott from Digital Hive here, and I'll throw it over to you in a second. But I want to get into the bigger picture here, which is that business intelligence and analytics have always been designed from day one to give us insight about what's really happening in the business. How many widgets are we selling in which region? Why is the question that you want to ask yourself as you look at marketing campaigns and market dynamics and things of this nature. And there's never a solid 100% accurate answer. You always have to guess a little bit or presume or synthesize information. And that's what gets me excited about the approach that you've taken at Digital Hive. Is you're not trying to replace Tableau or Click or Teradata or any of these guys. You're trying to provide a window through which people can get information and insights from all those systems. That's the consumption side. But then the action side is the rest of the story. What do I do now that I have this information? And again, none of this is new. I mean, we've had ways to optimize pricing, for example, or delivery, to prioritize delivery. Think about supply chain. Let's use this example maybe. Supply chains are, of course, in trouble right now. We have ships in Los Angeles that are going way out to sea, just waiting to unload their stuff. That's throwing off all sorts of retail operations, even manufacturing operations. And if you're in the middle of that game and you have, let's say, 500 widgets come in, you got 10 customers, each of whom wants 200 to 1,000. Well, how do you know which client to give these resources to? And the answer is you have to look at a lot of different factors. One, who are our best clients? Who are our most reliable clients? Who are the clients who pay on time, for example? Who are the clients that we have really good relationships with versus new clients or clients who don't pay? Like, all these different things come into play. But the point is, if you have that information at your fingertips as a decision maker, now you can make an informed decision and do something about it. And it's that action side that gets me really excited. We've had all the analytics for years and years, and we've had ways to optimize business process management, et cetera. But where rubber meets road, it's still pretty kludgy and pretty rough. And where I see this new analytic hub portal concept going is the whole branded experience of an environment where you can see what's going on and take action, is that now you can pretty seamlessly take that action and build out simple workflows from the environment to all manner of operational systems. To me, that's pretty exciting stuff. Scott Masson, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, problems are easy to answer when when you've been through the scenario before, or you can, foresee the future somewhat, and you can actually build a report or dashboard that helps to answer the question. Your scenario exactly like supply chain, being impacted, as it never has like in the past. Right now, if I was an executive and I want to sit back and I want to get some insight into my business, I would either have to go to IT and ask them to build a dashboard, which could take weeks. You miss your window of opportunity to respond correctly, Or as most businesses are, I mean, you have your sales data in, Salesforce and maybe Power BI. You have your operational data in Cognos, and your marketing data in Google Analytics and Tableau.
That's right.
Well, if I want a composite dashboard of elements from all these different things, I'd either have to log into the 5 or 6 different tools that I just mentioned and kind of maybe open up, minimize browsers, and maybe lay things out side by side, which is a horrible experience. Not to mention, as an executive who they love logging into different technologies, would have to log into 6 different tools to get that piece of insight. I think back to probably one of the most common workflows that we see all the time is that monthly management meeting, right? Where somebody spends 2 or 3 days of their life copying and pasting and snipping different visualizations or different KPIs and putting them into a PowerPoint deck to be used in the monthly management meeting. And then lo and behold, that management meeting gets delayed by 2 weeks. The person has to go back and redo it all because now their data is all 2 weeks stale, right? So what we do, or what analytics hubs do in general, is they give a live view now for executives to log in at any point during the month and see that composite dashboard in real time, right? We don't need to wait for that composite PowerPoint presentation to be cobbled together. An executive can log in, they can see their Salesforce, their Power BI, their Cognos, their Tableau, their marketing data from Google Analytics, all laid out side by side. And if it isn't something that they readily have accessible to or is available to them, they can quickly drag and drop reports and create their own view on the fly. It doesn't take, IT to get involved to actually build out solutions to these questions.
I'm going to bring Yves in to comment on that. It was such a brilliant example you just gave, because you have different systems for different kinds of data and data analysis. Your procurement systems, your sales numbers, your marketing data. I mean, isn't marketing always on a different ship in the organization? Like, marketing always seems to be over there, either down the hall or upstairs or downstairs, or now, of course, scattered around the country. But this stuff all has to be tied together, Yves. I mean, you have to know, what is the marketing stuff doing? How is it affecting sales? Which salesperson is in operation and is doing well? If you can pull from multiple systems and create that sort of meta dashboard, that's very exciting, because now in a moment's notice, in a moment or two, a senior executive can go, oh my goodness, I see what's happening now. There's, this campaign is not driving sales in the right places. I mean, these are important things to understand in order to run a business, right, Yves?
Exactly. It's tying everything together. I was just trying to visualize all the, like you said, the monthly board meeting back in the days with the printed reports and discussing. So I was thinking about the data silos and how a portal can help in that respect. It's like you say, quickly creating the data lake, or what was supposed to be the data warehouse, to conform all dimensions. And dimensions is kind of all the entities, all the things that we know in a company, like a product, like a client, and try to standardize the reporting so you understand what your business is about. But it has proven that it takes too long for the business to get to those insights. But if you can have that data and like you say, in a portal available, and then mesh it up yourself and trying to get the feeling, from the business perspective, that these numbers are way off or they look odd. So you have a feeling, if you combine them, that they do make sense. But having that speed to those insights, that's of crucial importance. And like you said, Scott, in real time, that's even more important, not having to wait for the overnight batch process to get to that data, or maybe export into a CSV file into Excel with all the massaging and the technical issues what you come across. So that's really what you see happening, more and more portals and analytics hub that allow you to connect to the various systems. And no matter that's an API connection or a flat file or it's a report or whatever, but having that abstraction to talk to your data in the same way, that's really a really push forward in getting faster to that insights. And I always compare it with my accountant, where I have to submit all my invoices, whatever, and then after a quarter he comes back and it takes another month to get the insights, where I think, guys, it can't be that difficult to just ingest the data and give me at real time those insights. So that's something where businesses as well need to understand, that on a technical level, you have other possibilities to get faster to the insights, and you don't need to do it anymore like you did in the old days. So
yeah, that's a really good point too, and maybe I'll throw it over to Scott to kind of keep diving into this. But the key again is that you have this multi-dimensional view of the world. It's if you're running the business, you need to know how each of these departments is operating. And traditionally that's been via discrete reports from discrete systems that a person then has to manually absorb. And to your point, like create some, multi like faceted view on your desktop, which is just painful. But when you can see it all together, woven together like that, I think that's the critical component for success. The key, I guess here's the real point I wanted to make. There are always lots of ways you can do this. I mean, there are ways to do this now with lots of different existing technologies. The question is, how easy is it to do it? How performant is it to do it that way? If there's some upgrade, is that going to throw things off? I mean, when you upgrade one of these components in a pipeline, it can break the pipeline. Now you got to fix the pipeline. So it's really always a question of ease of use and performance. And I think you guys have solved some of those challenges. Can you talk about like some lessons you learned along the way, or why is it that you're able to very quickly consume these different tools and build dashboards quickly?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of respond to something Yves said too before is, I think technology is one of the few things that nobody ever said, oh God, it was better in the old days, right? So, I mean, technology keeps evolving and keeps getting better. But that being said, what we do at Digital Hive is we connect to all these underlying systems via the native APIs, right? So we don't lift and shift your data, your content into another data silo that you have to protect and worry about. And through those APIs, if you update your application or if you update your business model or the reports, they automatically flow through to the hub itself, right? So there's never any point in time where your replication or synchronization process fails and you're out of date now. We're always live and up to date with the content. So we've kind of removed that pain point of having to upgrade the technologies under the covers. We ingest it through the APIs. So we take advantage of all those upgrades on the fly.
Yeah, that's important stuff. Upgrades. I always fear the upgrade, Yves. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm like, oh God, no, please don't upgrade it because something changes. But you got to embrace the upgrade, right? Especially for security. What do you think?
Especially and especially the managed services, how they call it, that you leave it up to the experts and you don't have to worry about the upgrades, like you say, Eric, but that you can focus on your business. So that's a very important part. Yeah, you want to have the upgrades because you want to have the new feature set. That's where you want to go, but you don't want to go through the hassle. I sometimes see that with my MacBook. Sometimes I'm reluctant to upgrade to a new OS because something has changed for the better benefit, but it breaks my workflow. So
right.
Yeah, and that's the trade-off where you need to look at and benefiting from the upgrades and moving forward and focusing on your business.
Yeah, I think that is one of the. Oh, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
Sorry, Eric. Yeah, I was going to say that there are two different types of upgrades, right? There's the one you voluntarily choose, right? Oh, it's got a new feature and release X, let's take that. Then there's ones that we have to take, a la Log4j that recently impacted everything. You're mandated to take it. So you can't, as much as you try, you can't insulate yourself from upgrades, right? And that's and I think we kind of steered away from your original question, Eric, about being easy to use and being able to create these workflows, and that's upgrade was one element of it. The other one is the ability for an executive to, without having to have any prior knowledge of coding, be able to look at their catalog of content, if they, say in the situation or scenario where they're trying to build that composite view or, that dashboard view across multiple systems, they need to be able to quickly drag and drop content onto a blank slate, build their own view and save it, right? Again, without any code, should be all drag and drop. For most business users, probably drag and drop is the extent of their technology capabilities. They're not coders by trade. So the ability to build these experiences within that, that branded context that you're talking about, without having to require any special skill set or coding, is essential to, to the success of these type of analytic hubs.
That's a great way to close out. We'll talk to you next time, folks. You've been listening to Inside Analysis.